Last week, we looked at factors that are outside the firm, whether that's the external operating environment or industry level factors that impact a firm's performance. This week, we're turning our focus inside the firm and looking at the competencies, resources, and capabilities that create value. And why do some firms in the same industry perform better than others? There are a few different points of view as to what creates value inside a firm, but first we're going to define a few terms. So, what are core competencies? Core competencies are unique strengths embedded deep within a firm that allows a firm to differentiate its products and services from those of its rivals. Core competencies result in creating higher value for the customer or offering products and services at a lower cost. It's essentially something or some activity that a firm does better than anyone else that gives them a competitive advantage. Resources, capabilities, and activities all can help create core competencies. So, a resource is an asset, whether it's tangible or intangible, that a firm can draw upon. A capability is organizational and managerial skills, and activities are distinct and fine-grained business processes. So these are your verbs, these are things you're doing, whereas resources are your nouns, they're things you have, and capabilities are probably closer to a verb here. They're kind of somewhere in between. They're kind of a set of human capital skills. So a few examples of core competencies. IKEA boasts superior design skills in creating modern functional home furnishings at a low cost. For those of you who are local to Fairbanks, you might know Hoodoo Brewery. They probably have superior marketing because they have a good perception of being cool. Facebook, they have superior algorithms to offer targeted online ads to customers, generating value for their business customers. General Electric, my former employer, has superior expertise in industrial engineering, designing and implementing efficient management processes, and developing and training leaders. So, with these definitions in mind, let's turn to the resource-based view. RBV is a theory that sees certain types of resources as the key to superior firm performance or value creation. And resources fall into two categories, tangible and intangible. So, tangible resources are physical assets like a factory or an office building, and intangible resources can be something like intellectual property, copyrights, brand equity. So these aren't physical things, but they are assets. And you can decide if a resource will lead to superior performance using the VRIO model: valuable, rare, costly to imitate, organized to capture value. VRIO. A resource is valuable if it enables the firm to exploit an opportunity, or to offset a threat, or to increase its economic value creation. We'll talk about this a little more next week. Your book lays this out a little bit. There's the value you create for consumers, or the cost it takes to produce a good or service. And if you can increase the difference between those two things, you're increasing your value created. So an example would be Beats Electronics. Some of you might be familiar with Beats by Dre. So they design and market premium headphones. They've now been acquired by Apple. But the production of a set of Beats headphones probably costs about $15, but they retail for at least $150. And they're able to create that premium value because some of the resources they they possess must be valuable in order to create that difference between a $15 headphone and a $150 retail price. A resource is rare if only a few firms possess it. So once again, going back to Beats Electronics, they have vast celebrity endorsements thanks to Dr. Dre's connections and product placement in TV, movies, and a lot of prominent places, and get a lot of coverage. And that is rare. Not many firms could imitate that. Which gets us to our next letter in the VRIO model. Costly to imitate. A resource is costly to imitate if firms that do not possess the resource are unable to develop or buy the resource at a reasonable price. So once again, Beats Electronics, having Dr. Dre at the helm is invaluable because he can call up all his celebrity buddies and they can endorse his product. If you or I started a headphone company, it is unlikely we'd have the same connections as Dr. Dre. And it would be very difficult for us to imitate his strategy. Finally, a resource is organized to capture value if the organization or the company that possesses that resource has an effective organizational structure and coordinating systems. So we'll turn away from Beats by Dre for a second and look at Xerox Palo Alto Research Center. So Xerox, you might know, is a copy machine company, but they actually developed a lot of leading edge technologies. The Ethernet, the mouse as you know it, the PC, all came from Xerox, but they were not organized to capture value, which is why today you still know Xerox as a copying company and not as a leader in personal computing. So the resource-based model doesn't discuss values or how. So the resource-based view is a static model. That's its one shortcoming, is that it doesn't explain changes over time. It looks at a point in time at what resources a firm has at that moment and analyzes that. So kind of in response to that, a second perspective developed, which is called the dynamic capabilities perspective. Dynamic capabilities is a theory that emphasizes a firm's ability to modify and leverage its resource base, gain and sustain competitive advantage in a constantly changing environment. So essentially, how well does a company adapt? How easily can it modify its resource base? So get rid of resources that no longer add value, add new resources, and a lot of that in the dynamic capabilities perspective comes down to capabilities, which is those managerial and organizational skills and how you actually are able to exploit resources. If you have a valuable, rare, and costly to imitate resource, but you're not able to capture value, that last variable in the VRIO model, then it really doesn't provide a long-term competitive advantage for you. So dynamic capabilities focuses on companies' ability to create those skills and change its resource base to adapt as external operating conditions change. The last tool we'll look at in this video is the value chain. So the value chain is a tool that managers use to help identify what activities generate value in a firm. So I'll give you an example of a value chain on the next slide. It shows the internal activities a firm engages in when transforming inputs into outputs. So each activity adds incremental value. There are the primary activities that directly add value, and then there are support activities that add value indirectly. So, for example, here, this would be maybe a manufacturing firm. This might look a little different for a services firm, but you can still draw out a value chain model. The primary activities include supply chain management, operations, distribution, marketing, sales, and then after sales service. So essentially, you're bringing material inputs in, you're transforming them in some way, then you're sending them out and selling them, and then servicing them after sale. And that's what directly transforms inputs to outputs and gets products in a customer's hand. But then you have these support activities like R&D, information systems, HR, accounting, and finance that are absolutely necessary to a firm. And if a firm has an advantage in any of those areas, it can improve their cost structure or help add value for customers in a number of different ways. So essentially, this model, you'll look at each stage, how much value is being created and how much cost is being created. And it can help you as a manager to identify which functional area or part of your business is the most productive or the most valuable. Um, Essentially, helping you to identify a core competency.